I'm telling it to do it.
It says online that is recording.
All right, you're in business then.
Great. Well, hopefully we're recording. Thank you for joining me tonight to talk about district grants in Rotary District 5420. Every district, of course, has their own way of managing district grants, but tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how we specifically manage them in our district. And just to kind of give a quick overview, I think what we want to do is talk about what district grants are, the process, how you apply for a grant, what's required of grant recipients, and then we'll look at some of the forms that are involved and answer questions, if that's okay with everybody. First of all, the Rotary Foundation funds district grants through district designated funds. I think most people know that district designated funds are funds that come back from the Rotary Foundation 3 years after they have been donated from clubs in our district. It's one of the ways that the Rotary Foundation helps fund Rotary projects. And what they do is once they've held and used the money for 3 years, then they return a portion of it to us to be used in our own local projects. And we divide that money evenly between district and global grants. And so every year we have a pool of money that is given to us to be used specifically by our clubs for whatever projects within guidelines they wish to use them for. We have come up with in our district a way of distributing these grants that is a little different than a lot of other districts have done. This is actually my third Rotary Club in my third district, and each club I've belonged to has done it differently, and I like our way of managing it much better. You know, a lot of places, they make it a competitive effort where you submit an application and a committee at the foundation committee looks at it and decides which club's projects are more worthy than others. Well, quite frankly, we figure everyone's projects are worthy and we want to make sure we can fund them all. So what we try to do is be as fair as possible in making sure we fund all clubs because all clubs deserve money. But we also do it according to the ones that are donating the money that creates the district designated club that we're using for grants. So those clubs who are generating the most donations to the foundation and thus helping us to generate that district designated funds are the ones that are more eligible. And what we have is a tool that we use to calculate that based on both the number of members you have in your club as well as the amount of money that your club has donated over the past 3 years. Now, it's important to know that it's over the past 3 years, not just 3 years ago, that we use for a couple of different reasons. First of all, if you were to have a club that had a major donor, somebody who donated $1 million or more in 1 year, if we were only looking at one Rotary year, then basically one club would get 100% of the funds, and that wouldn't really be very fair. But also you have smaller clubs and you have anomalies that happen within different giving years, and by averaging it over the last 3 years, you take into account the growth of a club, anomalies that might happen, and you allow new clubs to be able to get in on the cycle before 3 years. And so that's a pretty important part of that. And I see Jerry talking. Does he have a question?
Is if a club gets their money in late and they've got 2 donations in 1 year and none in the other year, which happens routinely, that would really be a disadvantage. Whereas if you do 3 years, you make up for it. That's an example of an anomaly that you were talking about.
Absolutely. Yep. That often happens. And we do absolutely encourage all clubs to make sure that you get your donations in early. Don't wait until the end of the Rotary year to turn them in. Turn them in quarterly. That helps your Rotarians with their tax credits. It helps Rotary with accounting. And it helps us with tracking donations in district designated funds. Absolutely. One of the other things we try and do before we apply the calculations to every club is we do look at new clubs, satellite clubs, or clubs that have special needs that have to be addressed. And we usually try and help those clubs at a base level, and then we absolutely try and fund all clubs afterwards. Let's see. So the district grants process is really what we need to look at next. First of all, there is a one-page application. It was sent out in the packet for this training, and the application that you have is updated. It is the 2017-2018 application, and so that's the one that you would use with your club or any club that wanted to apply for a grant. It's up to date. And also you have gotten a sample district grant application that I had already filled out with a club's information, just to show you, what kind of things we're looking for. And we're going to go over that in a minute. But those applications, it's a one-page form, very easy, are due on July the 1st. And so something to keep in mind right away is, you got to make sure you have your project planned and you have this turned in by July the 1st. Now, the reason that gets turned in by July 1st is we want clubs to have the money as soon as they can possibly have it within the Rotary year. We use the Rotary year, which is July 1st through June the 30th. And what we do is, as soon as we get those applications, as long as everyone has already submitted a final report for the previous year and those are closed out, we can take your new applications and submit them to the Rotary Foundation for approval. As soon as we get approval from the Rotary Foundation, then we get the money and we can actually fund your grant. Now, the way you know whether you've gotten your grant or not is you will receive a grant contract from the district grants chair. Generally, that happens in the September timeframe, but again, that will depend on when we can close out our district final reports from the previous year. So that's a really important part of the process. The contracts are a piece that are very important as well. We actually have 2 clubs this year who have not returned their grant contracts and thus have not received their grant money. We're in the process of looking at how we're going to be reallocating that money to clubs that have completed successful projects and deserve a little extra funding. The grant contract is our way of knowing that you have read and understand the grant guidelines and the requirements associated with your grant. Basically, one requirement: file a final report after you're done. Not hard, but obviously, it's still a sticking point for some clubs. When you get your grant contract, it's very important to read it. The grant contract has a description on it, and that description is not only what you submitted on your application, it is also what the Rotary Foundation says you can do based on your description. I'll give you a great example of that. A couple years ago, we had an application submitted for youth travel to Mexico for a trip to do some construction and some different things. And one of the things that the Rotary Foundation required was documentation of insurance and some of the ways that the kids were going to be taken care of during the trip. And so we had to put that on the grant contract, that was one of the stipulations. One of our other clubs was doing an event that was partially community benefit and partially fundraising. And it's it's against the rules of the Rotary Foundation to write a district grant for fundraising activities. You can't use grant money for fundraising, but you can use it for community benefit. And so when we wrote the grant contract for that, we had to write it in such a way that it eliminated funding for any of the fundraising, and it only had to do with the community activity. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Contracts are signed by 3 people. It needs to be signed by the person who is in charge of the project, whether that's a project manager or your foundation chair. Hopefully most clubs have a foundation chair. If you don't have one, we really suggest you do have one. A foundation chair is somebody who helps not only track grants and grant opportunities, but also will help you track donations to the foundation and a number of other things. And so that's a great position to have. You want somebody who will be in that position for several years and could be fairly knowledgeable in your club. In addition, you need to have your current president sign, and you need to have your president-elect sign. Now, the reason we have the president-elect sign is because come June 15th, when your final report is due, if you haven't turned it in, then comes June 30th, and what happens is the president just became past president, and they often go on vacation because it's been a long year, and then we have real hard time closing out those reports. So if the president-elect has signed that, just another layer of accountability. Unfortunately, with a volunteer organization, sometimes we have to do that. We've had issues in the past, and really our goal is not to make your life hard. It's to make it easy for us to get the grant applications submitted so we get you your money absolutely as fast as possible. That's really our goal, is to get money in your hands sooner rather than later so that you can accomplish your projects. Okay, so I said that the final report deadline was June 15th. That is pretty much as late in the Rotary year as we can possibly push it without making it hard for us to close out all of the grant final reports and then still process the applications. Again, you have a one-page form that will be used to submit that, and it needs to be submitted with copies of the receipts for the items that you purchased with the grant money. And that can be submitted electronically. It does not have to be submitted by mail. Don't send your original receipts. Please send a copy of your receipts. Keep your original receipts for your own use and for backup in case something happens to the ones that you've sent me. It's one of those things that's really important. Now, when you're submitting your district grant final report, you're going to be submitting it to a new address. And Bruce, this is actually news to you too, because I just took care of this in the last 24 hours. But we now have a dedicated email address for district grants, and that is grantchair@utahrotary.org. That way, all of the emails are going to a dedicated email address, and not only I, but other people in the foundation committee and hopefully my upcoming trainee who will be taking over for me will be able to access all of the information in that as well. Okay, so as we're looking at final reports, one of the other things I want to say is don't wait until June 15th to turn in your final report. As soon as you finish your project, fill out the form, attach your copies of the report, and get it filed. That way, right there when it's fresh in your mind, you can turn it in. I can ask questions. We get them answered, and it's just out of your hair. You don't have to worry about it again. You're not going back 3 months later, searching through your desk, trying to figure out where that receipt for copies was or whatever it is. Okay, so go ahead and get those submitted right away.
Question, Chris?
Yes.
Which report is submitted to the dedicated email address?
Final report. All district grant correspondence is now going to go through that email address. Now, I still have my other email address, but I want all official documents to start going through that email address.
So you're not going to have them mail them anymore?
Well, I'm still going to have them mail the applications, but the final reports have always been a digital file.
So they would scan their receipts and
yes.
digitally mail it to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the easiest way for a lot of people. Now, they can still mail me a hard copy if that's easier. I don't mind that at all. I just find there are a lot of people who hate having to do the mail thing and the snail mail thing, and they have office automation to do digital. And so either are acceptable.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so as you are submitting your final receipt, your final report, a few other things to remember. You have to turn in receipts, make a copy, not the originals. And if you're doing a project that's abroad and your receipts are not in American dollars, you need to document what the rate of exchange was when you purchased the materials that you purchased. Because there's no way for me to know, and there's no way for the Rotary Foundation to know how many pesos equaled a dollar on the day that you purchased that lumber or that paint or whatever. And they want to know that that money has been spent appropriately, that we didn't actually skim part of it off because, you know, we got a better rate of exchange or whatever. So you have to document what the exchange rate was when you make your purchase. It's very, very important. Okay. Let's see. If you don't file your final report, 2 years ago, the foundation committee decided that after June 15th, you will receive a bill for the amount of your grant. You're going to be paying it back if you can't file a final report on it. So not only are you then in arrears for paperwork, but now you're going to have to, and that's not something you really want to have to handle. Hi there.
Hi.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing we want to do is have people in trouble. We want to make sure we get you your money, that you spend it, and that we get them filed so we can get you more money the next year. Some of the things I think that people have questions about are, what can you fund with district grants? I think we'll talk a little bit about that next. Okay. First of all, anything that relates to the mission of the Rotary Foundation, and of course we have areas of emphasis that are required to be covered in global grants. Well, they're suggested, of course, also in district grants, and so we highly, encourage people to stay within Rotary's main areas of focus, which are health, disease prevention, literacy, economic development, child and maternal literacy, and which one am I missing, guys?
Peace.
Peace, absolutely. One that's most dear to my heart, of course. So if they are related to most of those things, it's a great start. They like to have projects that include the service of Rotarians. If your club is participating in delivering dictionaries or going down to Mexico to help build the water wells or whatever it is, they love that. Of course, it has to be lawful. It has to adhere to the laws of the United States or whatever country that you are doing the project in. The project needs to happen within the Rotary year. Now, the Rotary year in this respect is not July 1st through June 15th. It's when we receive our grant from the Rotary Foundation and June 15th. Okay. Another reason why we need to get those applications in to the Rotary Foundation as soon as possible, so we can get the money distributed as soon as possible, because that gives you a wider window of time in which to complete your grant. And that's something we're working more and more with clubs on, because when I came in 6 years ago, what I found was a lot of clubs were doing projects that were not necessarily completely compliant with this. I'll give you a great example. We still have at least 35% or so of our clubs that do dictionary projects with their district grant money. The challenge is, if you want to distribute dictionaries in September, a lot of clubs want to buy those dictionaries in May or June, but they don't have a grant yet. You cannot spend the money until it's been awarded. So if I don't award a grant to you until this year, it was September 23rd. Last year it was September 9th. You don't get awarded until then. Technically, you can't have purchased your dictionaries already. So it's very, very important that whatever project you pick fits within the time frame. Now, we had 2 clubs this year who we thought we were going to be able to get them done in time. Didn't happen, and we had to switch their projects because the projects actually came about before they spent the money before they had been awarded their grants. Scholarships is another one that comes into that time frame. A lot of times, clubs give scholarships, especially to college students, and they award them in the spring when the kids are graduating, but they don't technically pay those scholarships until September when the kids actually enroll in school. Falls outside of those guidelines, and so that time frame thing is pretty important. There are some specific guidelines that you have to look at if you're going to international countries about whether or not they are countries that have restricted access or participation by the United States. And if you have some of those concerns, let's talk about them outside of this seminar. But we did actually have a project a couple of years ago turned down by the Rotary Foundation because it was in a country in Africa where the United States travel was banned, and they didn't want anybody participating in anything in that country. The country had been basically put off limits by the United States government, and Rotary said, "Yep, nope, you're not going there." So those things come into play as well. Now, it used to be that you could not fund construction. That has changed. You now may do construction of infrastructure, including low-cost structures. You can do renovation, repair, refurbishment of structures. You can purchase and distribute health products, including contraceptives for use in disease prevention and maternal health projects. You can provide international travel for scholars, VOC team projects, participants. You can pay the direct costs and fees and labor costs, including stipends or honorariums, in order to help get programs implemented. If you have to pay somebody to help you out, you could do that. Pretty much anything having to do with Polio Plus or a lot of the practices of the World Health Organization are pretty much all approved. International travel is okay. Removal of landmines in cooperation with an experienced partner organization. That's a new one that I had never seen before, but it's there. Administrative expenses, if you have a lot of those for a more extensive project, that can be covered. And we can now fund youth programs. We've had a couple clubs in the last year fund RILA travel and being able to send more students to the Rotary Youth Leadership training. We also had a club this year that used money to help start an Interact club in one of their local high schools. And so these are funds that can help you to do those kinds of things as well. Some of the things that cannot fund. Technically, you're not supposed to have continuous or excessive support of any one beneficiary, entity, or community. Now, I've never had any issues with this, and we haven't really been focusing on it. I'm not going to say we will have trouble with it in the future, especially when we do the same project, some of us over and over again. But, it's not a stopping point for me right now. We do not fund establishment of foundations, trusts, or long-term interest-bearing accounts, no land or building purchases, no fundraising activities. Fundraising is something that a lot of us do, especially in association with nonprofits in our communities. And even though we are benefiting somebody else, another nonprofit, technically the act of fundraising is not permitted to be done with district funds. Okay. Expenses related to Rotary events such as district conference, conventions, institutes, or entertainment activities are not covered. Public relations initiatives not directly related to a humanitarian or educational activity are not covered. Unrestricted cash donations are not covered. And then there are some things with transportation of vaccines by hand over national borders and some things like that too, which generally we don't do with our district grants, but might happen with others. And so basically what we try and do is suggest that you come up with whatever ideas you want, because you as a club get to decide what are you going to do with your district grant money. Your allotment is going to be your allotment is going to be your allotment, as long as it falls within Rotary Foundation's guidelines and they approve them. And so I'm not going to try and tell you that a dictionary project is going to be more worthy to you than putting a park bench in or a trail or whatever. You as a club are going to prioritize your own projects. And you can apply for grants for more than one project. Several clubs do. And the key is you're not going to get extra money by having more grant applications. You still have the same entitled grant amount coming to you. It's just that you may be able to spread that money between more than one project. And what you'll do is you'll actually submit separate grant applications, and then you're going to prioritize them by telling me which one is most important, second important, third important. And then depending on how much money you've asked for those and how much you're entitled to getting, which again is calculated by the formula, is which grants get funded. And some of them may be funded fully and some of them may be funded partially. Okay.
When it's appropriate, could we ask a few questions?
Absolutely, please.
When the Future Vision went in, one of the things that was said was the global grants will have a lot of oversight, and that makes sense, cost effectiveness to manage those big grants, but it doesn't make sense to manage the small grants. So I'm a little surprised how much Rotary is looking at the district grants, which I thought were just like simplified grants that were that. I mean, they were approved at the district level and the Rotary didn't have anything to do with it. But you're saying they look at every grant application for a district grant.
Yeah, the process is once I receive all of the grant applications, I submit those to the Rotary Foundation Committee at the district level. And
you mean at the RI level?
No, first our district foundation committee approves those applications and my recommendations for how the money is going to be distributed. We talk about it. We decide, if we're going to give extra money to a satellite club or the last couple of years we've done foundation awards and membership awards out of it. We look at the distribution and make sure it's good at the district level first. And then I take all of that information that's been approved and those applications that have been approved, and I have to type them into the Rotary Foundation's grant tool online. We actually submit all of those applications, a description, the budget, everything to Rotary.
No, you don't actually send a copy of the grant, the one-page grant application.
No, I have to. I actually retype all of the information on that onto a grants tool online. Yeah, and then that is Ken Waterbury at the Rotary Foundation looks at each one of those and then sends me back questions or concerns. And we talk about it, and then he either approves or not approves all of those applications. Okay. And we have to have all of them approved before they distribute our money out of the Rotary Foundation.
That leads to my next question, which, so they look at them all.
And then on the back end, they're also looking at the final reports. I have to go back into that same tool and report that money was actually spent the way they say it was, and that the receipts are there. And then I sign a thing saying, if you check, I promise I have a copy of these receipts. And then they reserve the right to audit us. And so the receipts reside here at the district level, but they have to be available for review by the Rotary Foundation.
Okay, that leads to the next question, that when Future Vision came in, one of the statements was that where global grants have to fit an area of focus, district grants, yes, need to fit the mission of Rotary, but the mission of Rotary is very general
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't have anything to do with the areas of focus. My understanding has been that district grants do not need to fit an area of focus. Am I wrong?
Nope, that's correct. That's correct. But they do like them to have something that has some benefit, community wise, with the basic Rotary mission.
Well,
And they want Rotarians to participate.
I think the final question was, these are new for me, some of these, what people can do. And I'd known that we could do not just bathrooms, but low income housing. But now they're saying construction of infrastructure, including low cost shelters.
Yes.
What is construction of infrastructure? You can't buy a building, but you can construct.
Can't buy one. Yeah, but you could build one. For instance, we're doing in Ecuador. They're doing.
But that's low cost housing.
Relief. Well, they're doing that in conjunction with the Catholic Church. What they're doing is they're rebuilding the houses that were destroyed.
Well, they're new housing, but that's one of the things that was improved or that was approved was low cost housing is approved.
Right.
My question is my understanding is you can't construct a new building, but that you can. What Bruce, is infrastructure the guts of a building?
I'm a little confused about that whole area myself. I've approached the RI about it a couple times, but I think we'd have to go to them and get a ruling on each individual situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my experience has been they changed this a couple years ago when they changed the RILA thing. They changed to several different things and broadened the scope of what could be done, because purchase of land or buildings is still excluded, but now building them and when we were in Puerto Penasco a couple years ago, you guys did painting and repairs, but now they're letting us build new houses in Ecuador. So it's
but that's specifically low cost housing. So I don't know that if you got out of the low cost housing area, you would be approved.
Well, I don't know. I think if you're also doing clinics or schools or something like that, you would be okay. I think if you were trying to build a business or something that was not
a large school, no. And I don't know how they divide this up, honestly. It just hasn't gelled in my mind at all.
Okay, I think I get it. It has to be limited and it has to be approved.
Well, and I think that, the immediate impact of the need tends to be weighed a little bit too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. And the thing with most district grants is, truthfully, most clubs are only getting hundreds or a few $1,000s. They're not really getting a huge amount of money. So when you're talking about, construction of buildings, there's a lot of other things that are going into that project, is in terms of fundraising and being able to create a bigger project like that. So district grant isn't always the first place people look for those. And so, other questions about the restrictions or what can be used for?
Chris, this is Brenton. Could you revisit the formula?
Absolutely. So the way we calculate the district grant, I wish I could actually, well, you know what? It says, I see a share screen button. Let me see if I can make this work.
Try it.
Let's see, let me pull this up. Okay. Now I'm going to hit share screen.
Frank, do you have to give her the share screen?
No, we already set it up where everyone can have access to the screen.
Okay, so there it is. This is the tool. So you see on the left-hand side, we have all the clubs listed. And on July the 1st, I went in and I put in the current club membership. And then I listed both the total giving, and then it automatically, because I already had it in the spreadsheet, calculates the giving per capita based on the club membership.
You're talking about a 3-year average?
Yeah, so you see in green you have 2013, 2014. In purple we have 2014, 2015. And then in the light blue you have 15, 16. And so those are the years we use to calculate the grants that we're currently in this year. And then in the orange columns there, I don't know if you can see my pointer moving. That's the 3-year average. And then it basically gives you a ratio. And honestly, I am not a mathematician. Kim Kerr and Kelly Atkinson really were the geniuses that put this together. But basically what it does is it gives you a ratio of what their average would be for those last 3 years. And then right here in this submitted apps column, there's either an X or not. If a club did not apply for a grant, there's no X. And then their amount doesn't get pulled out of the ratio calculation. And so it only is including the clubs that actually apply. And it calculates for you what their ratio is and what their entitled allocation is. And so, for instance, on the first line here, we have Bountiful, and they were entitled to $2,490 based on the formula. They requested $5,000, and then based on what monies we actually had after we took out awards and funded a satellite club and a couple of new clubs, that was where they ended up was the $2,300. Over here I have all my notes. They actually donate their grant allocation. Their grant goes to Murray, and that was the Ecuador this year. And so clubs, if they don't have a specific project they want to participate in or take care of, can participate with another club, especially another large club doing a big project. Murray always does a big international project. And for the last 4 years, Bountiful has participated with that. It's great for Bountiful because Bountiful does not have to submit a grant application and they don't have to submit a final report, but they also feel good about the fact that they supported the project and were able to give more money to the people in Ecuador. And they send people down on the trip too. So they do actually participate. But they don't have to do all the paperwork by piggybacking on Murray. Does that kind of show you a little bit about how that works?
Yes, that was great. Thanks.
Sure. And it's really, I think it's really a great way to do it because it takes all the impetus off of us to have to make a decision, like I said, on who's got the best project. That's not my desire to make that decision. Then all I have to do is just track who's done what.
The ratio of giving is the percentage their money was of the total, right?
Yes.
Pull that 1% of the total or whatever, 2%, 1.044. Or...
Yeah. So, for instance, Bountiful is 0.027157%.
Which should be 2%.
Or 2.89% right here. Yep. Yep. And again, it's really important that we calculate this based on your membership, because otherwise a club like Salt Lake that has a lot of members and also has a lot of donations would get all the money. But by doing a per capita, then even a small club, as long as your members are donating, a reasonable amount, they're doing their $100 a year at least, or whatever E-Ray, then they're getting the same credit. And so that makes it really important. So let me see. So like, for instance, right here, Salt Lake, of course they have, like I said, they have a higher percentage, but they get 22% of the money because they raise 22% of the money.
Do they get 22% back?
This
Or
year
is
they
that-
got $18,000.
So that is 22%, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jerry, if I can interrupt you, this is Glade. Chris,
Hi,
look
Glade.
at Cedar City. Hi. Sorry I joined you late, you guys. I won't try to ask many questions you've already repeated. But on Cedar City, if you look at Cedar City,
Oh,
whoops,
yeah.
we lost.
I'll pull it back up.
My question about Cedar City, it looked like they qualified for 4,000, but they only asked for 2,800.
Right. So they left money on the table.
And
I'm
the
only going to
percentage,
fund you 100%, but I'm only going to fund you for what you asked for.
sure, and that's only fair. Okay.
And so what that money does is that money goes back into the pool and then went to a club that needed more money for their project. Because we're only going to fund you up to the point that your project needs cash. Now, I would be willing to look at bet that if we looked at your project, that you could have asked for more and used it. So my suggestion is you always ask for a little more than you think you might get. And it's always hard to know exactly how much you're going to get because that is partially dependent on how much money we're getting in. And unfortunately, next year we're getting quite a bit less than we did this year. This year we got more money for district grants than we'd ever had. And that's because we had a big bump 3 years ago with a big donation.
So here's my question to you and to the others. Would it be advisable because we know how much money's coming in this next year, would it be advisable to tell the clubs that you may have this amount of money available to you?
Well, it's not really accurate because since not all clubs apply, there ends up being more money in the pool sometimes than that. And I mean, we've had anywhere from 60 to 100% participation by clubs in my tenure. And so the amount available every year really varies depending on how many clubs apply.
Glade, what I've had Chris say is that you look at what you got last year and go by that. And she's already given you the information. We're getting somewhat less. So if you looked at what you were eligible for last year, what you could get from her, and then a little less would be that's the best predictor is what you got before.
Yeah. And even that isn't going to be 100% because this year we had, let's see, how much did we had? We had, I forgot the number.
80-something thousand, wasn't it?
87,000. And I think next year we're only getting, isn't it like 53,000, Bruce?
Yeah, I think that's what Bruce said.
Yeah, it's much less. And so that's going to really impact our ability to give.
Do you think the percentage is going to be the same? For instance, again, looking at Cedar City, you had 4.6% or something like that. If you did 4.6% times 50,000, that would give you a pretty good average. Although the percentage is going to change every year, isn't it?
It changes every year because what I'm going to do is drop off the 2013-14 donations and add the 16-17 donations so that if your club made a lot more donations or makes a lot more donations this year, then it improves your ability to up that amount because it's entirely driven by how much the different clubs give.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. I used to say I could try and calculate that for people, but the more I looked at it, the more I realized it was really a shot in the dark on my part. And I didn't want to mislead people by having them either feel like I had asked them to overshoot or that they were leaving money on the table. My suggestion is ask for more than you think you might get just to cover, that side, but also know that if you don't get it all, you're going to be funding it with club funds or business sponsorships or something else because your project can be funded either 100% with this money or it can be funded only a portion with this money. It's really up to you. We're not going to tell you you have to have a matching donation to it or anything like that. That's totally up to you. You spend it how you want, but the best way to do it is just to apply for, at least what you got this year or more, and hope that we don't have as high a participation, and that your club
I do
is
have
generous.
I have one more question, because I think what we want to do is try to get people actively involved in the grant process and understand it a little bit better. Do you think it would be wise, and Frank, I don't know whether this is to you or Bruce or anybody on the committee, would it be wise for us for the clubs that we have responsibility for, is to get back with them and say, hey, Spanish Fork, or whatever club is, you had the potential of getting $500, you only asked for $2, or you didn't ask for any, and
Right.
say next year, this is money that you put in, you're going to have access to it. In other words, to try to encourage them to know more about the process.
Absolutely. I think that would be a great idea.
I'm sorry?
Great
I think
idea.
Yeah, great.
But what we need to know, and maybe you've given us the calculations and the money available. In other words, for the clubs that we have, can you let us know how much they could have qualified for, how much they requested, so maybe we can contact them and say, hey, to educate them.
Sure. Yeah, I can make this spreadsheet that I was just showing you available. Because I think, transparency is part of this process. Is we want it to be as clear as possible how we're making these decisions and how that comes about.
What I'll do, Chris, is send out an email tomorrow telling the specialists that you'll be sending the spreadsheet out that
Okay.
shows what they could have gotten, and if they
Okay.
did or didn't, and follow Glade's suggestion. That,
Okay. Yeah, that'd be
Frank,
great.
Frank, we probably shouldn't send that as an attachment. We should just take the information out of it and send to them. Don't you agree?
Right. Yeah. You just, like for Spanish Fort, you just tell them, you call them and just say, last year you were eligible for 500. You chose not to ask for anything. You left $500 on the table that you could have plowed back at least into a community project.
So Chris,
Okay.
to make it easy on Chris will send the original form to the foundation specialist, but the foundation specialist will only share with the clubs their particular information.
Right.
Okay.
And
Good. I like that.
you could make an estimate, Chris, if last year was 89 and this year is,
53.
do we know that?
We've kind of gotten a number for what they got 3 years ago already.
142.
Or no, for what we're getting this year. It's been announced.
Do we know that 53 is 89 correct and is 53 correct?
I know the 89 is correct. I don't have my notebook handy. Or the other, actually, here it is.
What I'm getting is back to Glade's question. That's a percentage decrease that could help them.
And Jerry, along those lines, we could tell them that, look, your club was eligible for $500 last year. You chose not to get any. There will be a decrease in funding this year by approximately 20%, 30%.
Yep.
So you would probably be getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $400. You ought to take advantage of it rather than leave it on the table.
Well, and the other thing is that even clubs, I'm going to go back here to my share again. Even clubs like Zion Canyon, brand new club, only 1 year worth of giving, we still made sure we gave them a minimal grant. They got $600 just because as a new club, even though they didn't have the full 3 years, they did have some foundation giving and we wanted to encourage them to get on board with foundation giving, because this is really a symbiotic process. We want people to use the grants, and we want them to be so excited about using the grants that they give more money, so that they get more grants, so that they get more, so that it's a self-perpetuating thing. And then let's see, up here, we also had Rock Rotary Club, and Rock Rotary is a new satellite club of the Murray Club. Now, technically, how a satellite club works is that they are a part of the main club. And so at the Rotary Foundation, all donations made by Rock Rotary members are recorded as Murray Club members. And so the money that Murray gets technically includes the money for Rock Rotary. Now, one of the challenges we have is figuring out how do we separate that out. And at our level, at the district level, we haven't got any means of determining which members are from which club. And so we have to work with those two clubs to help them determine how to split that money up. Does that make sense? And that's something that's come up brand new this year with satellite clubs, because this is the first year we've actually had satellites. And now we have a new satellite club down south that's going to be fairly active as well. And so actually our committee will be having some discussions about that upcoming. But we do try to fund anybody at least a $500 level. Mount Timpanogos Orem this year only asked for $250. We went ahead and gave them that $250. But, for the most part, 400, they asked for. We try and make sure that there's at least a minimum, of $500 there, unless they ask for less, just because you can't do a project with less than $500. It's just, it's not a big enough carrot to give them $100 grant.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more money. It's a lot more work to do it than it is to come up with $100 for dictionaries or whatever. So, okay. So does that help explain that part of the process a little bit more? I do want to just real quickly talk about a couple things I'm looking for on the applications and the final reports, so that as you're helping clubs or as you yourself are going through the process of filling these out, it's a little easier. So basically it has a project description, and it says explain the scope of the community impact and the unmet need this project will serve. And so what we're looking for is a description that's specific enough that we know that you've planned the project. We know if you're doing dictionaries, how many schools you're going to, how many kids you're going to be giving dictionaries to, how many labels you need to print. If you're paying mileage, you need to tell us approximately how many miles you're going to be trying to cover mileage for, so that you have enough detail to show that the budget you've attached is accurate, or at least, a fair shot in the dark. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to at least show that the money that you're asking for isn't more than you need for whatever your project is. And that they are still also looking for, that description of what unmet need this will serve. So you need to also say no one else provides dictionaries to the students, or they have no water well within 10 miles or whatever it is. Make sure that part is in there as well. Then list how many Rotarians you're going to have, what your project cost is, and in this box you need to tell us that breakdown of how that budget is going to be spent. In this example that I gave you, and these forms are all going to be on the district website for people to pull down and use as they're filling out their own forms. Funds will be used to purchase 1,520 dictionaries at $2 per dictionary, and labels for the inside of the books at $40. Club funds and corporate sponsorships will cover costs not covered by the grant. So that gives us a pretty good idea of where the money is going. Pretty. I mean, it's pretty basic. It's specific, but it's not long. It's not, you don't have to give me details of you're going to buy the labels at Kmart. I don't want to know that. I just want to know you have a basic idea of how much they're going to cost. And if you're doing a project you've done in the past, it's easy. Look at last year's project budget from from the final report. And then if you know you're buying extra dictionaries or whatever, you can adjust accordingly. Then it needs to be signed by 2 people, and it needs to be signed by the project manager and the president for the upcoming Rotary year. These applications, because they're being submitted on July 1st, are technically being signed by the president-elect, the person who will be president during the year of the grant award. You do need to be physically signed by the person and mailed to me at the physical address or the post office box at the bottom here. And that's just an accountability thing. We need to make sure people are actually aware of the grants. They're not getting into the history, but we're just another basic CYA thing that we've done to make these grants easy to manage, and the process flow as best for you guys as we can. You can, as you're filling out this application, email me a copy and say, would you look it over? Give me suggestions. What am I missing? Love to do that. Happy to look it over before you get it all signed and in the mail and then have to redo it. So much easier to just be able to get the final copy signed. And if we do it in advance, then it gives you plenty of time to dig up whatever information you need to be able to do it correctly. And it also gives you time to get feedback from me as to whether or not your project may or may not qualify for the grant guidelines. Questions about the sample application? Okay, well then the sample final report form looks a lot like the other one. And the real difference is it says final report form and it has this budget section at the bottom. First of all, you need to make sure you describe what you did and who the beneficiaries were. Make sure that you're explaining, again, the detail. Literacy is, this one again is for a dictionary project. Literacy is a critical skill for students to develop, to assist third grade students to build solid educational foundation. Our club provided 969 third grade students and their teachers in X County with dictionaries. And then if you have a small project and you can list all the details in this box, I would prefer it. If you have a project that has more details, attached, because like on this one, one of the things we actually have been required to do is I need to actually say which schools in which districts are receiving, so that they know what the school counts are. Just as easy for you to, you guys all have a list of what schools got how many dictionaries. Attach it to your thing and we're good. They also ask you for a description of how Rotarians participated. You can easily put that in there. The most important section next to the description is this bottom part where it says income and expenses, because this is really the part that hangs most people up. You're going to list in your income, of course, your district grant. Then you need to list any other funding that you received. If your Rotary Club kicked in, if you bought supplies, whatever it is, a corporate sponsor, if there are more than one Rotary Club participating, go ahead and put it all on there. And whatever that total project income number is needs to equal the number at the bottom of the expenditures, because then you're going to list out what all you bought with that money. So we need to show that the income and the expenses net zero. Does that make sense? If you have more income than you have expenditures, then you're going to have to pay the money back that was not spent. Now, if you spent more than your income, you need to show us where the extra income came from, because somebody covered the extra cost. Even if it was you taking it out of your pocket, then what you're going to do is, write, get a receipt from your club saying you wrote a check for $10 or whatever, and put it in there. As long as there's a receipt, it's important to have a receipt. You'll notice on here, I actually list out on the lines what was there: 42 cases of dictionaries, 10 rolls of labels or stickers, 1,000 labels, the cost of printing the labels. And then I have down here something that is just fine. This is not a problem. Dictionaries and Rotary stickers not used this year will be stored and used in 2008. Because oftentimes when you're buying like dictionaries in case loads, you may end up with 10 extra dictionaries. we're not worried about that. Neither is the Rotary Foundation. Just account for the fact that they'll be stored and used for the next year's project. This form, again, you're attaching all of your copies of receipts to it, and it can be emailed to the grant chair at utahrotary.org email address, or it can be physically sent to the post office. Questions about that? Issues I run into with final reports that are the most important, again, were that budget section at the bottom, making sure that the receipts actually match the numbers on here, and making sure there's enough detail in that description to justify why you spent the money you did. Okay. Now those are coming up. I'd say I've got probably 15 clubs that have submitted final reports to me. Some are completed, some are incomplete. And what I probably need to do, Frank, is send you that list tomorrow as well, so specialists know where their clubs stand, and then they know how they can best assist them, whether they're helping them with a final report or if they're already helping them with an application, or both. Yep.
Frank, I do think that I've had a computer to the side with each of the forms, so I'm looking at while she's talking.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will, but when anybody goes to listen to this recorded class, they need those in front of them. It'll make it far more understandable.
Okay. I'll put that as a suggestion, because they should have them all.
Yeah.
And I have them on my computer. Until we pulled up that spreadsheet, I hadn't considered trying to put them on the screen, but I like this tool. I think it works pretty well, and it's pretty easy to troubleshoot as we go. So maybe as Kelly's taking this and hopefully editing it for us, he can throw those up there or something.
Yeah.
He's magic. Kelly, you're magic. Let's see. What other questions do people have? Anybody? It's not a hard process. It's just a matter of if you know the basic deadlines and guidelines. It's fairly easy to navigate. My suggestion is, as you're writing a district grant, that you put all of the grant deadlines on your calendar for the whole year. When you're working on it, make sure you have that application deadline July 1st on your computer. Make sure that you have that final report deadline June 15th on the computer, and that'll help a lot, because then you'll know automatically what you're doing. When you get your grant contract from me, you will automatically have copies of the final report forms and everything attached to it, so that I try to make it as all-inclusive as possible. Those are sent out electronically, so you want to make sure that you have checked or put that grant chair at utahrotary.org as a bookmark or contact in your email, so it does not go to spam. Because when that contract arrives, you want to make sure that you get it. You have 30 days once the contract hits your desk to get it signed and returned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, again, I encourage people to call or email with questions and get on the district website. We've got all of these documents there, the new applications, the application example, all the new guidelines, everything is up there, and we'll be ready to go. Actually, tomorrow I'll have Errol post the ones with the new, because I just put the new email address on everything today, but we'll make sure they're all up there so that people moving forward have everything they need.
Hey, Chris, I'm hesitant to ask this question because maybe you've already discussed it, but just let me ask in case you haven't.
Good.
We have been told before, do not purchase anything until the grant has been approved. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah. You cannot spend the money until you have it. And so what that means is when you get that email from me saying you've been awarded your grant, you can start spending the money. You know, I don't, as long as you return it to me, as long as you return it to me signed, you're good. But until the Rotary Foundation gives us as a foundation committee the blessing on your grants, you can't spend any money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It would be a good idea if a club wants to do dictionaries and wants to get them out in September, they probably ought to do their district grant on something else and fund the dictionaries by the club instead of the district grant.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to wait to order books in October.
Right. Now, one of the things I actually have experienced with that too is, as I've been asking clubs to wait on their dictionaries for that very reason, I'm finding that most of the clubs that get fairly quick turnaround on their order, they're not really waiting 4 months like they expected they would be. So, you know, check with your vendor. There are a few different vendors out there for those student dictionaries, but it may be that you could still get them the time frame that you want in order to do an October distribution. It's, you know, it just depends on your dictionary.
Okay, good idea.
Yeah.
Great job, Chris.
Excellent.
Very
Well,
good, Chris.
make sure you contact us, get involved, and please let us know how we can improve the process, what issues people are having, but mostly enjoy getting out there and doing some exciting projects to help people and having fun in the process, because that's what it's all about.
Very good. Well, thank everyone for joining us tonight, and be looking for emails from myself and Chris tomorrow.
Greg, thank you so much for setting this up.
No problem.
For a long time.
I'll send a note to Kelly thanking him for sharing this with us. So,
yeah,
good tool.
Awesome.
Thanks, Frank.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Good night, all.
Okay. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.